Here are our 3 topics for this episode. Every leader says they want to be data-driven, but do you even know the right questions to ask to make it happen? How do you build a culture that truly obsesses about your members? For all the credit union marketers out there, how do you figure out which marketing campaigns are delivering real results? And lastly, what do credit unions really want from their vendor relationships? Welcome to Grow Your Credit Union, the podcast where credit union leaders gather, learn, and grow. I am your host, Joshua Barkley, and with me is my co-host, the best person in Texas. Am I allowed to say that? Best person in Texas? Becky Reed. Becky, say hello to our lovely audience.
Howdy, y'all.
Before we begin today's show, I want to first mention our sponsor, Strum Platform. They help credit unions accelerate deposit, loan, and relationship growth with smarter marketing analytics. We'll talk more about Strum Platform later in the show with our sponsored guest, who we will introduce here in a minute. Becky, I got to mention this one more time. Just got back from my road trip cross country, and I got to tell you, this will be the second time and the last time that I badmouth Nebraska, I promise. But the one thing I did find curious, Becky, as I was driving along and I saw an exhibit, a big sign along a cornfield, and it said, Petrified Wood and Art Exhibit, Exit 282. And what I'm wondering, Becky, was there a time where the petrified wood exhibits were just popping off? Like, was that the hot thing with the kids back in the 1950s? And then the owner said, you know, the petrified wood thing is starting to get old. We need an art exhibit. So, Becky, please, before we start the show, can you talk to me about petrified wood? Is there anything you know about this that I should know?
So you mentioned the 50s, and Josh, I was not alive in the 50s. Thank you very much. I'm not that old. So I have no idea if petrified wood was a thing. But what I can tell you is when you drive, like if you do a Route 66 drive, right? Every town has some weird thing, right? To make you want to stop by. So there's the biggest ball of yarn. There's the Jolly Green Giant is somewhere in South Dakota. In Nebraska and Alliance, there's Carhenge, which is basically Stonehenge. That's a bunch of cars that looks like Stonehenge. Yeah. 50,000 people visit it every year.
Hey, and I can get behind that. But what I can't really get behind is I just feel like the guy who has that exhibit I'm referring to was like, you know what we need? Petrified wood and a fake Mona Lisa painting. All right, let's kick the show off. Today, I want to welcome our sponsored guest, president over at Strum Platform, Mr. Ben Stanglin. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Many credit union leaders express a strong desire to be data-driven, but they often struggle to ask the right questions to get there. After the data is activated, nobody knows the right questions to ask that will move the needle. So for the credit union leaders who do want to move the needle, what are the right questions they should be asking about their data? Ben.
Yeah. When credit unions go down the road of digital transformation, that means a lot of things for a lot of different credit unions. They go through these phases of trying to get all the data together because that's a big challenge. And then after all the data is together and it's cleaned and they're looking at it now, the next step is, okay, how do we visualize this data? And from that step itself, we have disparate systems from disparate areas, and we have disparate groups that are deciding what they want to look at and see. And the issue that we run into, that we see, is we have these beautiful dashboards, but what do we do with them? And a good example would be looking at maybe loan production. Very important to look at loan production, seeing what we're doing. But the real question might be, how can we help members with loans? Who are the members that need loans right now? And how do I activate that? Instead of just visually looking at, okay, how are we actually doing on our loans? It's how do we move that needle? And so asking those questions are really important within the team and having that alignment. And I think it goes down to also having a data-driven culture, which is it's really hard to actually have in moving that needle because you need everyone on the same page of we're not just looking at the data, we need to actually actualize it and then take it even further from there. It's not only looking at and actualizing the data, but it's tracking it on the backside. How is it actually performing? After we send out this information, we've marketed these loans. Are we actually getting people, besides the vanity metrics of clicks and opens, are these people actually funding? Are we actually seeing them convert? Are they coming into the branches? And that's extremely important and powerful to get more momentum going culturally, because when you start seeing movement of actual results, it catches like wildfire for other folks within the organization.
Becky, data-driven is your middle name. They call you Becky, data-driven Reed. You know all about this. How did you build a culture around asking the right questions? Because as Ben states, there's data everywhere, but how do we ask the right questions about it so that it actually creates a business impact and it's not just fluffy 7 million clicks, but what revenue did that produce? What impact is that driving? So how did you build that culture around asking the right questions?
Well, I think that for most people, the whole data journey is really scary and it's very overwhelming. And he mentioned earlier having to homogenize the data, getting it all in one place. And that in and of itself can be a very daunting task, especially for a midsize or a small financial institution. And so a lot of times they resort to just doing reports because they think that they can't have a robust data analytics tool that doesn't include a data warehouse. I can tell you that for most credit unions, everything that they need to know is already in their core. And so all they really need to do is start pulling some of that data out. And even if you have to start from a very remedial place, spreadsheets and stuff like that, because a lot of the software solutions, I'm going to be honest, like to sell you dashboards. Okay. They show you some really cool dashboards. It's very interesting. And you look at it and the CEO goes, oh, wow, this is really cool. And then after you've looked at it for 3 months and you find out there's really not much else that it can do, it gets boring then again. And then you find out that in order to build a new kind of dashboard, it's going to cost X or it's going to take X amount of time. And it's just very frustrating. So what we did at Lone Star is we started with a question. You both talked about asking the right questions, but it's continuing to drill down until you get to an answer that you might have to find a solution for. So, you know, there might be an anomaly you detect. All right. So we just did a loan campaign and we noticed that we didn't get as good of results as we expected. Well, why is that? And then you start looking at that. Okay, well, how many loans did we get from the last campaign? Oh, well, what did the demographics look like of the people who applied for loans? What was the credit score? And you continue to go down the rabbit hole until you get to something where you go, okay, wow, there's the difference. Now, what do we do about that? And so starting with a question was the mantra that we used at Lone Star in order to start that data journey.
And I like that. And I want to pass over to you, Ben, when thinking about the right questions. I don't know if this is a chicken or egg question, but do we unify the data and think about the technology and then think about asking the questions? Or do we need to think about these questions way before the technology picture even comes into the scene?
Yeah, Becky brings up a good point. I think people get too hung up on the technology and the shiny object. And you really need to start with the questions of what am I trying to answer here? And what does success mean to the credit union themselves? And defining that is going to help drive your technology stack, whatever that is, whether you're a mid-size or smaller credit union, and where you're actually going to go. I think that's so important. We can run into problems when a CIO or a CEO says, hey, I love this. We're going to implement this. But if it's a big, monstrous, I'm going to pick on Salesforce. If it's a big, monstrous, like product like Salesforce, and you don't have the team in place to support it, you're set up for failure just from the start. And I think that too many credit unions fall down that rabbit hole of looking at the product before thinking about what am I trying to answer.
And Ben, do you think like if you can ask the right questions, like let's say your staff may not be like 5-star data scientists with super data acumen, But if you can ask the right questions, I feel like even a regular everyday Joe like myself, who's not a data scientist, can produce a lot of value within the credit union. Have you seen that in your experience when dealing with financial institutions?
Yeah, and it's hard to get talent right now in the data analytics field for many credit unions. I think we run into that all the time. Anybody can ask certain questions. I think if the tool's easy enough to use to get the answers that you need, then you have success there. Where you run into problems is if the tool is complex and it's hard to use, and you're maybe trying to ask some questions, but you just can't figure out how to get the answers you need out of the tools that you have. And so that's the challenge that certain credit unions run into.
Becky, I'm sure that as a credit union leader, to Ben's point, you're not flushed with all these 5-star data scientists coming out of these big prestigious schools, right? So what I'm wondering is there's a need for speed. Not only do we need to ask the right questions, but we need to get the right answers, but we need to get them at the right time. So my question to you, Becky, is how did you deal with limitations of data talent to be able to get the right answers quickly enough to do something actionable with it?
To Ben's point, if you have tools that are easy to use, it really makes it easy. So you don't have to have a 25 people who understand data analytics. Now, you might not be able to do predictive analytics, but I mean, look, guys, if you've been in the industry for any amount of time, you understand what the data is telling you. You understand member behavior. I think one of the things about certain softwares is that they actually give you too many choices.
Yeah.
So then you're sitting there going, well, I don't really know if I should choose this or that or whatever. And you don't really have the time, to your point, Josh, to kind of test it out and see. So the best solutions are the ones that are the simplest and they are as real time as possible.
Jeff Bezos famously said, obsess over your customers. Ben, I'm not trying to compare you to Bezos.
Thanks.
But you mentioned something similar. You said you have to have the right culture around understanding your members better. What do you mean when you say that?
Yeah. So I'm gonna pick up on something Amazon did or Jeff did with his team. So I'm out of Seattle and I can throw a rock and probably hit somebody that works at Amazon here. When Amazon started off, when they went public in 1997, they were worth around 450 million or something like that. Was their market cap. Around 2004, they had a product called Super Saver Shipping, I think was what it was called. And it was buying certain things and you would get shipping for free, but it wouldn't be 2-day like Prime is today, right? And so one of the head engineers, his name is Charlie Ward, he actually brainstormed, hey, wouldn't it be great if someone paid us a certain amount at the beginning of the year and we would just ship them instead of having to bundle different shipping things, we just ship them. And he wasn't thinking 2-day, he was just thinking ship him something for free as part of that membership at the beginning. And it turned into Prime. Like Jeff, of course, took this and everybody else is kind of thinking this is crazy. Like we can't really make this work. No one's done this before. We're going to lose a lot of money. And then the backside is saying, hey, you're taking down red tape where people will actually shop more and use Amazon more, and it's more convenient. And now I can buy something and it's coming to my door same day. I'm in Seattle, so I can get it pretty much 2 hours. And anything I want can be delivered here. And if you think back to looking at your customers and looking at your customers' needs, and you relate this to a credit union, it's how can we bring down the red tape? How can we make it easier to get money, send money, figure out how to invest money? I mean, these basic questions, a lot of fintechs have done a really good job in this area. And so the opportunity is, as a credit union, do we partner? Do we build? How do we actually make this work is extremely important for the overall survival of the industry because we've seen less and less credit unions every year. And how do we actually make this work? And I think that's the kind of key for Jeff is paying attention to your customer and looking at those pain points.
Becky, I know some stories about some things you've done that kind of speak to what Ben is referring to, but tell us how you build a culture around understanding the member better.
Well, something that I hear in credit union land is, well, if our members want it, they would tell us they want it. And that is not true. Well, what I can tell you is they want the experience that Ben just talked about. They want to be able to push a button and have something come to their door in 2 hours. That's what they want. And unfortunately, what they get with their credit union app is they can't even send $5 in 5 minutes. And so what our members want is the experiences they are having out there in the digital world already. Now, are they going to call up the call center and they're going to say, I want you guys to be like Amazon? No. Do you do that? Do any of you call your credit union and tell them you want them to be like Amazon? No. But what you do expect is that your best digital experience is now the bar. That's what everybody else is going to have to live up to. And so what we did at Lone Star is we didn't do surveys. We didn't do focus groups. We didn't ask our front line what the members wanted. We looked at what they were doing. And that gets back to the data that Ben is talking about. We pulled the data on how many of our members are using Amazon and how much are they spending every single month? How about Cash App, Venmo? What are they doing? And what we found at my credit union, $5 million a month was going out to Venmo and Cash App. $4 million was coming in. So we were losing a net $1 million every single month to apps that were doing things that our app couldn't.
You know, that's interesting, Becky. You know, I heard someone say something recently. They're a fintech. And the guy said to me, he said, Josh, it's not about the products, you dummy. It's about the experiences around the products.
Amen.
And Ben, would you agree with that sentiment?
100%. 100%. I think it's how you can make that experience seamless. I think it's going to be an ongoing challenge and you're not done. I mean, I think it's an ongoing journey. It's like a lot of things in life, you're always trying to make it better. And I think that we're always looking for ways to make the experience of our members easier, better, more seamless, to get what they need, because that's really how we're competitive.
Well, I want to double down a little bit. He just talked about we're always trying to make the member experience better. And let's think about the apps you have on your phone. How often do they get updated?
Pretty often. They
could get updated once a week, once a month, once an hour. One day you just open up your Facebook app and it has a whole different look. Looks completely different than it did a week ago. And we just accept that as part of the constant experience. Think about Amazon, what it looked like 10 or 15 years ago. Not even the same, not even close to being the same. How often does your digital banking app get updated and have a different look and feel?
Yeah. And I think that there's some people that are afraid of risking big updates right there. So Facebook has a lot of audience. They can make tweaks. They can make some big changes. People aren't going to say, no, we're never going to use. I mean, people might, but they're not going to leave forever. And I think that there's fear that we make so many changes, we're going to lose members, we're going to lose people, and yet taking these risks. And I'm going to go back to the Amazon. I mentioned Prime. That was a success. Does anybody remember the Fire Phone that Amazon put out? That was a flop. That was a horrible idea. Like his idea of kind of connecting, how do I get people to shop more? He was trying to connect it back to the Amazon, but the UI was horrible. He was giving them away. I think he wrote off the whole thing. So some ideas are good, some ideas are not so good, but he actually risked it to learn and to understand. And I think we need more of that in this industry.
Before we go on, I first want to mention this episode's sponsor, Strum Platform. Strum Platform is a cutting-edge member data solution designed to empower credit unions with the tools they need to thrive in a competitive digital landscape. They specialize in hyper-targeted marketing through advanced automation capabilities, ensuring every member interaction is tailored to enhance engagement and drive growth. The platform integrates seamlessly with existing systems, streamlining workflows and maximizing efficiency across marketing campaigns. From targeted messaging to comprehensive analytics, Strum Platform enables credit unions to optimize their marketing strategies and deliver impactful results. Statewide Federal Credit Union used Strum Platform to attract more than $12 million in new deposits in less than a year. Their platform allowed statewide Federal Credit Union to profile the lifestyles of their members and create precise marketing segments. Ready to connect with members with the right message at the right time? There it is. Discover the power of Strum Platform by contacting Strum to schedule a demo and see firsthand how they can revolutionize your marketing at strumplatform.com. That's STRUM platform.com. Marketers, we have a trust problem. According to Forrester's 2024 marketing survey, only 64% of B2B marketing leaders trust their organization's marketing measurement for decision-making. This raises a key issue with marketing attribution. Becky, during your time as a credit union leader, did you trust your marketing attribution data?
Well, the poor marketers out there that work with me are like, oh my gosh, don't ask Becky this question. No. Yes and no. I think that where data analytics lives oftentimes really isn't marketing, in especially the credit unions in the smaller end of the spectrum. Data analytics and analyzing a marketing campaign kind of lived in IT. And it was because those are the people that pull the reports, right? Those are the people that have the data. And a lot of times credit unions are not using the tools on the marketing side of things to give them that data that doesn't live in the core. So we have click-throughs, open rates. We usually have those kinds of things. But to get much more granular than that requires some sophistication that a lot of smaller credit unions, they just don't have the tools in order to do that. So it's not that you don't trust what the marketing folks are telling you. It's that they just don't have the right tools to be able to give you the best data.
Ben, Strum Platform, but one of the things that I really love about it, and it's like one of those key differentiators to me, among other things, right? But the attribution component, that kind of like profitability model that you guys deliver where I can see the results, like the clicks, 700 email opens on that last campaign. I can't run a credit union on 700 email opens in a campaign. So talk to me about Strum Platform and how you are solving for this attribution problem within credit unions.
Yeah, what we saw was great marketing automation systems that are out there. They're very powerful in sending out marketing messages, but not necessarily linked to the core. As Becky mentioned, a lot of the data in the core, obviously, in understanding your own membership, but seeing what is actually happening. And so we build a product that takes not only core data, it takes other ancillary data systems and puts it together and puts third-party information into your member set. So you have some demographic information that maybe you didn't have within your core set that we're able to target off of, send those to existing marketing automation systems that other credit unions have set up. We have our own as well, but we integrate with a lot of different systems. And then we track it on the back end. So we're looking at who's opened, who's actually engaged in the campaign. And then if they've actually went into the branch or if they funded anything, we're tracking that to see what's actually happening, while the marketer that sets up that campaign is saying, this is the cost associated with that campaign, and this is the duration that we want to look at, and having more transparency so that everyone on the team is aware of what's working and what's not working on a daily basis versus having to ask IT at the end of a campaign that maybe has lasted for several months. And you have you don't have much chance to make some course corrections to that particular campaign at the very end versus our system is checking every day.
I love what you're telling me about the platform, but the first question that I have to ask is like integrations, like what cores, what limitations from these old Frogger era systems do we have? What cores are you working with?
Yeah, I'm working with actually quite a few cores. So Pfizer, Jack Henry VIP, obviously a lot of fintechs are VIP members. Correlation is a darling core right now. We're done several integrations with theirs. With some smaller cores that we've worked with as well, like CU Answers is one that we've worked with. So quite a few different cores, and everyone's set up a little bit differently. Even within the cores, I mean, this is not a new subject, but even within the cores, everybody has their own kind of setup that they've hot rodded and made happen. So even if somebody says, "Hey, I've worked with this core," there's nuances in everybody's setup. And if you've been in this industry for any amount of time and dealt with it, this is what you deal with.
And then in terms of asset sizes, because I'm sure some people are listening to this and going, cool, man, but what do I need to be 5 billion in assets to be able to, utilize this tool? Like, what are the different asset sizes that you are working with?
Yeah, it's funny, actually. We signed our first 80 million, so sub 100 million asset credit union a couple weeks ago. And so excited to get them on statewide, who you mentioned earlier. I think they're at like 150 million. We work with billion in assets. So probably most of ours are around 500 million in assets. That's pretty common around that. But to be honest with you, we don't target or talk about, hey, we want to only go after this particular asset size. It's more of is this credit union looking for overall growth? And again, getting to that goal of what do you want to do? What's your existing stack look like? And that's one of the things that we ran into at the very beginning is saying, hey, we want to work with what you have. And we have some wonderful partners that do lots of full integrations, full data warehouse. I've worked with Architecture, for example, on multiple installations. I work with Prisma Campaigns on a lot of installations. We just complement each other. So it's kind of this wonderful fintech within the credit union realm, helping other credit unions.
And then in terms of like integration time, like uptime, how long does this take to get going? Because you mentioned Salesforce earlier and, Salesforce, my joke is, they'll implement you in 2050, right? And then you still won't get what you want.
Yeah.
So if I'm interested listening, like what you're saying sounds great, being able to understand what actions are driving growth in my credit union. But then my next question is, I don't want to wait until 2030 to get this going. So what should someone expect from you in terms of implementation time?
Yeah. Like everything, there's always caveats to this, but on average, it would be about, I would expect 90 days from when you actually sign to get started, like actually sending out campaigns and looking at everything connected on a daily basis, being updated. That's pretty common. I have a very good onboarding team. We've also started professional services. So as we're talking earlier about, it's tough to hire folks that are analytical and have worked with credit unions for years. I have a great team of folks that have been in the industry working with credit unions for over 20 years, specifically in analytics and in marketing. And they get leaned on for the right questions to ask, how to present the data to the executive team, to the board. How do we move our credit union forward? So that's pretty exciting. And that itself is under a year. So I just stood that up last October.
And then before we end the interrogation here, Ben, that I'm giving you, how many credit union customers do you have right now?
I think we're at 31. So it's a good amount of size. And we have a credit union advisory group as well, so that help us with our own direction of our product. As Becky kind of mentioned earlier, sometimes there's too many choices, and that is a really tough challenge as a fintech to not try to do everything. So we lean on that team on what should we be really focusing on and listen to them, and they help us out. So really appreciate that within the community.
Every year, credit union leaders evaluate countless software vendors, and one thing I keep hearing is, we're looking for partners, not just vendors. April Klobus mentioned that credit unions need to be seen as financial partners, not just transactional accounts. And similarly, vendors should be viewed as partners, not merely suppliers. But here's the challenge, right? Every single vendor claims, look, we're not a vendor, we're a partner. And so we've lost sight of like what it truly means to be a partner. So Ben, I'm going to like put you on the hot seat here. How do you genuinely become a partner and not just a vendor?
Well, and I think it's looking at the needs of the credit union themselves. It's tough as a fintech to survive, to make sure that you're still innovating. You have to be scrappy too on understanding where we're going to spend our energy. And it gets tough sometimes with credit unions because you want to support them as much as you can, but you realize you can't do everything. Kind of like existing credit unions with members, you can't be everything to everyone, right? We have to focus our energy. And I think coming and being open with your credit union that you're working with and saying, I'd love to support you in this area, but our product's not going that way, or this is our direction of our product. I think that's really important. I think that too many people go out with pretty ambitious roadmaps of their product that haven't been built out yet. And credit unions get burned because of it, because they're not buying the product necessarily of what they have currently. It's the product of the future that hasn't been built yet. And there's challenges there. So I think being as transparent as you can of, this are the resources, this is what we're focusing on, this is what the true deliverables are, and then being able to actually demonstrate constantly that evolution of the product and not staying stagnant, I think is extremely important. And there's lots of gotchas with contracts and stuff like that too, of course, that you're working with credit unions on that are they're always tough. And we run into, credit unions that are stuck in certain contracts and can't move over because they're stuck in those contracts. And that feels disheartening for a vendor trying to come in or a partner trying to come in to help them. And so you end up saying, hey, I'm going to take a bullet and I'll work with you on trying to lower this cost or making it so you don't have to pay as much or whatever that ends up being, right? To as long as everything is put out on the table, I think that's part of being that partner.
Can't be a partner with hidden fees. I can't be like, Becky, I know you didn't know about those costs. Hey, I'm a partner. I'm coming over for lunch later on. Becky, you've had time as a leader. You've moved away now in your own new journey in the technology space. So now what are your expectations of what a partner means? Like, what does it truly mean to be a vendor partner?
Well, one of the things we did at the credit union, so I'll kind of have my credit union hat on and then I'll turn over to the fintech side of things. But one of the things that we did at the credit union when we were looking at new vendors, and all credit unions have 100 plus vendors that are doing all kinds of different things. So it's really kind of a bear to manage. And when you're choosing a new vendor relationship, partner relationship, whatever you want to call that, we felt like culture fit was something that needed to be taken into consideration, as well as price, product fit, things like that, contract terms. Those are all the standard things, all the due diligence that you do, making sure they have security and insurance and blah, blah. All that stuff is stuff you have to do regardless. But if there's not a culture fit there, if that company does not fit the ethos of your organization, it's just not going to work. It just isn't going to work. And so it could be the best price, it could be the best product out there, but if they don't fit what your credit union is trying to do, it isn't going to work. And I think, unfortunately, when he's talking about the long-term contracts that people are in, where the vendor just will not budge, and you see this a lot with Course, the vendors like that, that's your termination fee, that's your exit strategy, or, you have a 5-year notice before you can terminate the contract in 5 years. I mean, it's just crazy. That culture is a no. We don't want to partner with people who have that kind of culture. Now, putting my fintech hat on, it's trying to solve the pain points that credit unions are feeling and not just sell them a product. Let's help solve a problem. And if you can partner with them, truly partner with them and have them help you build it. Ben just talked about you're buying the future, right? You're buying stuff that they have on the roadmap that sound really cool, right? But they haven't built it yet. Well, on the fintech side of the house, if you don't have someone who wants it, you shouldn't be building it. So it kind of is a chicken and the egg thing. If you have a customer that comes to you and says, I really need this solution. We've actually had this at Bank Social. We had somebody who was having a pain point. There was no integration to their core that was available, not within the short term. It was going to take 2 years and it was going to cost X number of dollars. That was not affordable. And they needed a solution now. Their members were feeling a pain. They were getting complaints. They needed a solution. Sat down with us. We talked about it. We presented them with something that we could build. They said, that sounds good. Let's do it. And so now we're going to build it. So if they wouldn't have expressed that pain point to us, that might not have been something that we built. So being a partner is having input, having say-so, having the ability to express your desires, your needs for that member journey. So I think that as we continue to move down the road of being financial technology institutions, that kind of relationship is going to be more important in the future.
I want to double down on something which you said, Ben, about transparency around the roadmap, transparency around the contracts. And how do you deal with transparency in a world of, you mentioned them earlier, they start with an S. I don't want to badmouth them just in case they sponsor me one day. How do you compete in a world where maybe I'm a credit union leader and someone's selling me a dream and I don't actually know they're lying, and I come to you and say, Ben, what you said sounds good, but so-and-so said they can do X, Y, Z.
Yeah. I think the best way to deal with that situation is just have them talk to other people that have worked with you. I mean, that's the honest truth is just, we get that all the time. Like, give us somebody the same asset size, urban area, rural area, whatever. And that's pretty common. And just have them ask whatever question that they want, because they're going to find out real quickly whether they're going to deliver or not, whether it's the company that starts with an S that we're not talking about, or, yourself. It's are they actually going to deliver on the reputation? It's a small community, guys. I mean, everybody knows each other. So, your reputation means a lot.
That brings us to the end of the show. Ben, I want to ask you your final thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to talk to both of you. I think that credit unions have a wonderful opportunity to grow. The overall theme here, I think that we have to take risks. We have to look at calculated risks. We have to look at ways to help our members bring down red tape, make it easier to do things that we've just made it harder to do. And in order to do that, we got to make the experience good, better than good. Because that experience, as Becky had mentioned earlier, your best experience that you've had online or digitally is now your expectation going forward. And how do we make that happen?
And if any of our listeners are thinking like, I would like to talk to Ben about the product or maybe about something he discussed on the show, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can reach out. I've got my email, ben.stangland@strumplatform.com. More than welcome to use that. It's probably the easiest way. I'm also on LinkedIn. If you want to message me, feel free to message me there. I'll respond back to you. Happy to talk to you about any topic. Been helping credit unions for over 20 years, so love to share my stories.
Becky, after everything we talked about today, what are your final thoughts?
I think that credit unions often get stuck in the way things are. Look, we all do as humans. All of us do. We get very used to how things are. And when we get introduced to something that's new and cool, we adapt pretty quickly. But generally, when we're just doing our day-to-day, when we're coming into the credit union every day doing our job, we're not really thinking about what might be transpiring outside of our doors. And technology is moving at the speed of light. There are so many things that are available now that just you couldn't do a year ago or 2 years ago. And one of the things that I talk a lot about is sometimes I wait. I'm like, no, I don't think I want to buy that yet, because in a year it's going to be even better. And I think we need to start having that mentality in the credit union that next year we're going to be better. We're going to move faster. We're going to provide better service to our members. We're going to grow, whatever it is. But next year, we're going to be better. So think like a software company, credit unions.
If you want to reach Becky Reed, you can reach her on LinkedIn. Message her, tell her Josh sent you. No, I am not a part of Becky Reed's affiliate program, but just let her know Josh sent you. LinkedIn is the way to reach her. I want to thank Strum Platform. Remember, if you're looking for smarter analytics to help your credit union grow, you should be looking into Strum Platform. So go to strumplatform.com to learn more. And as always, I want to thank you, our listeners, for continuing to support and listen to another episode of Grow Your Credit Union. Remember, if you like the show, please follow us on your podcast player of choice and share an episode with someone who would benefit from listening. If you want to be a guest or you want to talk about sponsorship opportunities, head to growyourcreditunion.com to learn more. Thank you for listening. See you next time. Take care. Adios.